Welcome to Break the Box, a podcast at the intersection of faith, entrepreneurship, and creativity. I'm your host, Jake Starkey. The goal of this podcast is to tell the story of other Christian entrepreneurs and creatives and encourage you to break out of whatever box is holding you back. If you're a first-time listener, I encourage you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, Season 2 is coming soon, and we're excited to bring more of these to you on a regular basis. Today's guest is serial entrepreneur Mike Watts, and it took place right after his product, the Love Handle Phone Grip, was highlighted on Good Morning America. We discuss family, entrepreneurship, marketing, and how mission trips have impacted his life. A friend and mentor, here's my conversation with Mike Watts.
And a pleasure, and it was a timely blessing for us.
Sure. Can you go into that a little bit more?
We partnered up with the Dame and John as just an exercise of trying to bring someone with a lot of connections and just unforeseen opportunities, we felt like, in that partnership. And one of the things that came out of it was he got us onto Good Morning America Steals and Deals. He's friends with Tori Johnson, got us on there. But the timing of it is what stands out to me, because actually last week we're up to 18 full-time employees now, and we've had a lot of expenses hit in a short period of time, and we were down to honestly $6,000 in our checking account, and payroll's coming up next week. But this thing happened at exactly the right time, and it was a huge success. So it recharged our resources and allowed us to have the opportunity to move forward once again. So just in true God style, that's what happened, and it was a blessing.
That's awesome, man. I kind of wanted to get that out since you mentioned it right before we started, but let me back up a little bit. I would consider you a serial entrepreneur, and your history, the stuff that I know about you, is you love to take a product and take it to the next level, take it beyond what it was, what someone was already doing with it. And how did you get to be that type of person that can look at something and go, yes, I can do something with it?
Well, Jake, I spent a lot of time selling products that if they didn't sell, then we didn't have money for rent. And that's how I made my income. I had a regular job, but it didn't provide enough so that my wife could stay home with the kids, which was our personal family goal. And so I worked every weekend that I could at some sort of craft fair of some kind. And so I've been through a litany of different products, and each one had its pluses and minuses. And so I think just through the exercise of having to source and sell and see what sells well, that it allowed me to identify products that solve a real need, can be demonstrated, and will eventually be successful in the marketplace.
Sure. And what made that change for you from, I'm not just going to sell a product, I'm going to sell my product, or I'm going to bring it in-house and make it my own in a certain respect?
And that's a great question. And the reason is because I would come up with a lot of creative ways to market the products when I would go to a show. And normally that would generate fruit, and I would have good success. We'd have a crowd around our booth, and other vendors would notice. And so they would assume that it was the product that was creating that buzz, and they would go pull a tag off of one of my items and find my supplier, and next show there's two of us there, and ended up in a price war. And so it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to have a product or family of products that could be all mine, that I could control from the source all the way to the consumer, so that those efforts of marketing would be returned in full force back to my effort.
And so part of that serial entrepreneurship that I see in you is the Love Handle is not your first product that you taken to market. You've taken others. I remember Pivot Trim. Mm-hmm. Was that your first go at entrepreneurship, or kind of selling your own product, or was there something before?
Yeah, so that was the first one that was all mine. Prior to that, I sold briefly water-absorbing crystals under a brand name Rainsorb. I sold Lucky Bamboo. I sold hand-carved wooden replicas of airplanes and motorcycles. I sold the Lampe Berger from France. It's an air freshener. I've sold just a huge array of different products. But the Pivot Trim was the first one that was patented, and I held the exclusive license to it, so I was the only one that could make it. And so, yeah, it was an exciting venture for sure. Outside of that, in sales, I used to sell websites, just about anything I could get my hands on that I felt like I had a market. I guess it's really in my genes. My parents, entrepreneurs as well. They own a party rental business and have for 25 years. Pivot Trim was my first one that I owned myself. And then since then, I've actually had two additional patent license business ventures. One was under the company named Tree Stake Solutions. It's a product called the Root Anchor. And the Root Anchor, and I'm always looking for products that solve real world problems in a demonstrable way. And this product will anchor a tree. When you plant a tree, normally you put 3 poles and some wire around it. This system that a lady actually here in my hometown who I met through the Houston Inventors Association had invented an underground tree stake. And I'd always hated those. I'm a big tree lover. So I hated the fact that they would put a noose essentially around a tree, and it was stories about kids running into the wires and getting hurt, and I always had to mow around mine. So I knew that was a pain point and there was an opportunity there. And when I saw the product demonstrated, I said, well, that's a winner. And the timing was good for both of us. I had just actually sold the Pivot Trim company, had a new distribution center, looking for something to put into it. So that was a good marriage. And I still own that business today. And since then, we added the Love Handle product, and it's family of products that are forthcoming. And so I sort of wear a few different hats.
Absolutely. And then, gosh, I see you on social media all the time traveling, and the Love Handle. I love the fact that it was probably something that might have actually happened where you were holding your phone and you just ran out of hands. You ran out of ways to carry something, and probably the thing that got dropped was your phone. I know this happened to me. It's always the one that you don't want to drop. You don't mind dropping the keys. You don't mind dropping a book, but it's the phone that goes.
Right.
I remember the first time I heard about it, just going, that is just so obvious to me that this should be out there and this should exist. And then, using it, we go around town, and if someone doesn't know us and they see it, they always go, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the Love Handle, and you kind of show it and you flip it back and forth, and it's always interesting to see how people react, and then they want to know how to get it. And it's just a very simple, intuitive thing that once you know it exists, you wonder why it hadn't existed already. So you had applied to have it on Shark Tank.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing that I love too, is that you've turned something that some people would say it's the end, we're done. You didn't get on Shark Tank, but you still believe in the product. You still believe in what you're doing. You still obviously need to provide for your family, so you didn't give up. And so you kind of mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us what happened after that?
Sure. And for anybody who's listening that doesn't know what a Love Handle is, it's a simple strap that sticks on the back of your device and puts a handle on your smartphone. And we have make larger ones for tablets too. And it's one of those things, Tori Johnson on Good Morning America stated it very eloquently yesterday when she said, it's one of those products that you didn't know you needed, but once you have, you just can't live without. So I thought that was a very good description of one of this bit of an enlightenment. So using it. And so, we feel like it brings a lot of value. I felt like it was the perfect product for Shark Tank. I'm a huge entrepreneur fan in general. Just entrepreneurship to me is the lifeblood of America and economies. And I think it's empowering, particularly in America, that people can sort of cut their own path and be anybody that they want to be through the mechanism and the vehicle of entrepreneurship. And so as it relates back to Shark Tank, and many of you will know that, they've got the sharks, and I had, always sort of thought about, which shark would I choose, which one seems like the best fit for me and my product. And I had always keyed in on to Daymond John. And the reason that I liked Daymond John the best was because his motto is rise and grind. He's up every day, early in the morning, working, traveling. I mean, he doesn't need to. If it was just money, he's got plenty of money. He doesn't need to do anything else. But he loves entrepreneurship. He loves the game. And so he would seem like a guy that would be actively participating and working with us to try to create the vision that we saw for the product. So we went and auditioned for Shark Tank the first time at Consumer Electronics Show in 2016, I'm sorry. And about a week later, we got an email back saying, hey, you made it through round 1. Congratulations. Fill out this form, create a video, and had some good help with that from my friend here, Mr. Starkey. And we submitted all that, and they looked at it, and they said, you're not going to make the cut. They had no reason why we didn't make it on. So then we went back again the next year and auditioned once again. Anyway, I'm mistaken. It was 2015 and then 2016, because it happens in January. We auditioned again. Same routine, same thing happened again. So once again, we didn't get on the show. But I'm not the kind of guy that really is going to back away and say, you know what, this just wasn't for me. I was very committed to making a deal with a shark one way or another. So I decided I was going to single Daymond out and go after him specifically and directly. Now, fortunately for me, he operates a business in New York under the company Shark Branding. And Shark Branding has a street address, which means that I can send them samples. So we started blasting his office with samples that were printed with his logo on it and sent them to every person we could get a name for in the office and put their name on it. And because we knew that the product itself, you have to have a great product, right? So the product itself sort of does the work. Once you get it in people's hands, then they're going to fall in love with it, and hence the name. And so that's what we did. And next thing you know, one day the phone rings. We've got some interest from Damon and his team, and he's telling me that his team keeps telling him, you got to do something with those love handle guys. And he makes it a policy. He has so many good opportunities coming his way that he doesn't need to do any other deals. He has lots of, because think about it. If you're a shark on Shark Tank, you sort of, when you make a deal with one of these entrepreneurs, well, you not only get their business and that entrepreneur, but you get all the publicity that comes with it, which is huge. It's a big shot in the arm for a brand and a product. And so that comes with every one of those deals. And I didn't have that to offer, but we were able to get past that. He saw the value. And so we were able to strike up a deal and make him part of the company. And so we're only a couple of months into that, but it's already been a profound impact on us and our access. We're now making these custom printed for, you name the celebrity. We've probably made a sample for them already. Huge brands, things like that. And so having somebody like him on our team, it's just hard to even quantify the value that brings.
That's fantastic.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about Battle Cry Revival Marketing, the producer of this podcast. We believe that when businesses have quality marketing, it gives business... Hey, I wanted to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about Battle Cry Revival Marketing, the producer of this podcast. We believe that when businesses have quality marketing, it gives business owners the freedom to focus on what they do best. We design websites, produce videos, and create marketing materials to help our clients grow their business. Find out more at battlecryrevival.com. Now back to the show.
It is an exercise in faith because you don't know everything. You never will know everything. When we started, for example, I didn't know anything about injection molding, yet we were going to be injection molding trimmer heads that were going to rotate at 12,000 RPMs and run into hard objects, right? I didn't even know how an injection mold worked, but I went out anyway and said, you know what, we're gonna learn that. And really that, to me, is the core of entrepreneurship, is an exercise in stepping into the dark room, feeling around the walls, finding your way through. Yeah, you might bump into it a few times. It may be a little painful, but you're going to learn as you go. You're going to learn your way through the room. And then when you come out the other side, you're going to be much, much better off. And I feel that's the same thing in my faith and my walk with God, because I don't know everything. We don't know everything. We're not designed to know everything yet. We're supposed to go forward in this little bit of time we have here and try to bring the talents back to God that He's entrusted us with, those blessings that we've been given to, whom much is given, much is expected. So I feel a heavy responsibility to share and what I've been given and give it back and then return those back to God. There's been lots of times I can tell you about that our faith was honestly tested. I was blessed to get to operate this business with my father, all three of the businesses really, and side by side, a man of faith, strong faith. Our office manager, she's a spectacular Christian woman, and so having that sort of core group of knowing where we stood with God, and that gave us the resolve to take the risks, to take the steps when, again, even this week, I didn't know how we were going to make payroll, but I knew God would provide because He's done it so many times. And so I would say that over the years, my faith has become strengthened through entrepreneurship because it's given Him a vehicle to show me how He can come through in ways that I'd never even expected.
That's awesome. Because, I think that a lot of people are afraid to take that step because they're afraid of failing. And I think that what they end up doing is putting God in a too small of a box, that He can't possibly help a person out in this type of situation. And I really love what you're saying, that as you have taken those steps in faith, in business, not all of them probably have worked out exactly how you wanted, but yet God is still, that He's with you, that He's walking with you, and I can sense a confidence in you that a lot of people don't have, that sometimes I don't even think I have, and I enjoy seeing that on display. That kind of willingness to step out in faith is a very moving thing for me to be able to experience. So thank you for that. One of the things I wanted to bring up is in 20 something, our church went to Nicaragua on a mission trip, and my wife got to go. It was her first mission trip. She was scared to death, very scared to death. And she came back and she's like, there's this guy, his name's Mike. And I was like, Mike? She goes, Mike Watts. And I was like, first of all, I know him.
Yeah.
Second of all, what's going on? What about it? And she's like, his son got up and gave a sermon. His 15-year-old son gave a sermon. And I was like, well, tell me more. And she was truly impressed and amazed with the fact that a 15-year-old wanted to go on a mission trip to a foreign country. The fact that when asked, he was willing to step out in faith and give a sermon, that whether or not he knew he was going to be asked to do it, he accepted that challenge. And I think that comes from the way that you've parented and the way that you're trying to raise them up. And you talk about wanting to reach out to the future generations. Can you expand a little bit on that and what that means to you and how important it is?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely meeting Cindy was fantastic. And I don't really cry much at all. But when I saw my son stand up in front of, and again, back up a little, he didn't know he was going to do that. They asked for volunteers among a huge group of adults. And one of the mission team leaders had just glanced at him. And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And he was sitting right beside me. And I looked over at him and I was like, you going to give a sermon? And he's like, yeah, I could do it. I was like, have you ever given a sermon before? He's like, no, but we'll figure it out. And he stood up in front of well over 100 people. And it turned out that it was hot and it really wasn't enough room inside their little church, if you will, small cinder block building. So we had to go outside into this open area, and he even needed a translator. So it's not even like he got to keep the pace of his conversation up. He had to speak, and then the translator would speak in Spanish. And so I sat there in the third row crying my eyes out, because to me, there's really no more important job for a father than to instill a relationship and a faith in God. There's just nothing bigger or more important on my charge other than my own acceptance of Christ and what he did for me and sharing that gospel with others. But I would put my children at the top of the list for those that I want to see have that faith. And I would use that as probably the number one measure of my success as a father. So to see that, it was my oldest son. So to see that set home that we were doing the right things at home, and we were doing those types of things that were going to give him the tools that he's going to need to be successful no matter what he decides to do. You know, it's one of those things that, again, even going on a mission trip, or my 15-year-old deciding to go on a mission trip. When I asked him, hey, do you want to go? I had been once before, and I asked him, he never hesitated. He was, yes, sir, let's do it. So, well, you're going to be sleeping in a tent and it's kind of rough conditions. We'll be swinging a pickaxe most of the day and building fences and who knows, and cleaning 30 feet. And he's like, I'm in. Let's do it. So, I mean, I'm just so proud of that. And he's definitely learned that. I mean, I think that it's innate. Maybe it's in our DNA in our family in some respects, but it's also, he's seen me continue to step out in faith again and again, no matter what I'm doing. If anything, I'm deficient at staying still. I have a very difficult time not doing something, So I like to push the envelope and do something new all the time. And so that was a profound time for me. I'll never, ever forget it.
Yeah, Cindy talks about going back. She still talks about it as a life-changing thing. And I haven't gone to Haiti myself. It is a life-changing thing to just go and experience it. It helps put things in perspective in a way that it's impossible to kind of put into words, almost. And so your faith is something that you obviously find very important, that you use for raising your family, for being a husband, for being a son. How does your faith affect your entrepreneurship and how you proceed with whether it's small business decisions or whether it's large scale? Do we do this?
Well, I say it's a core competency for me because, last night we were having trouble with the computer system that's going to print out these orders. So all these orders from Good Morning America have to be printed in 3 days, have to be shipped in 3 days, or they cancel them. So it's a ticking clock for us, and we were having major software issues, having to try to figure that out. But, I kept a perfectly even keel, knowing, I said, you know what, this will work out, and I'm going to figure this out, because we always do. We always figure it out. And then I don't want to sit here and say that I have, this immense level of faith that nobody's ever achieved before, because I don't, but sure. I do put into practice my confidence, and the only way to be successful in whatever you're doing is to put the effort in behind it. People talk about faith, and there's very little faith in sitting on the couch. My dad always says, you can't lean on a shovel and pray for a hole. You got to do the work, but if you go out and you keep charging forward and doing those sorts of things in faith, and you're doing them in a way that's pleasing to God and honoring to God, then it will work out. And it may not be the exact way you think. It probably won't be the exact way that you think. But you're going to look back one day and say that it was your faith and God's grace that got you through that, and it probably got you to a better place than you could have ever even imagined to begin with.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing to me, because in the Bible it talks over and over again, and it shows us how you have to have the desire to go out and do the work, kind of like you're saying. In the Bible it talks about how Jesus sends someone to the river, and he's Jesus, right? Like, he could have fixed him right then and there, but he wants, the process is almost just as important, that we need to do our part, whether it's taking the steps of faith that, okay, if I go and get in the lake, if I take the time to do what's needed, mm-hmm. God shows up. And I think that too often as entrepreneurs and business people, and even for myself, that I look back on my life and say, if I'd have just held out a little bit longer, and because I feel like right around the corner, God's sitting there, but I back off and say, it seems like it's going to be really tough. I'm constantly impressed with people who choose to go forward, who choose to battle through the tough moments and not give up. Before we head out, I'd like to ask you a couple questions we're going to ask everybody. So there's no right or wrong.
I'm game.
So what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Beyond the coffee, I would say that for me, it's I try to create a bit of a system for myself, right? So, and this is probably practical for anyone. One of the big constants I see in successful people is successful people have goals, and we all have goals. Like, hey, I want to be rich. I want to retire early. I want to have a good life But I'm talking about very specific, concrete goals that you review and revise on a daily basis, or at a minimum on a weekly basis. And because if you don't know where you're going to go or where you want to go, then you're definitely never going to get there. So for me, it's a bit of a recollection of what are my goals? Why would I get out of bed, right? And I enjoy what I do. I really, really do. And is it easy? No. But because I know that each new day is going to present its own unique opportunities, some people would say challenges. I would say an opportunity for learning, and that that's what drives me. I know exactly where I'm going. I have a 1 week plan. I have a 1 month plan. I have a 1 year plan, a 5 year plan, and at the very bottom of my goals, and I'll quote what it says. It says that I want to lay on my deathbed and look back on my life and be proud of the accomplishments that I made for God's glory. Because I think that having that sort of eternal perspective, and that's why it's such an asset to be a Christian in entrepreneurship, because it gives you that perspective beyond yourself. What's really the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And once you really look at it that way, it's the worst thing that could happen. I could die. Okay. I could go to heaven. Not so bad. So in the end, it's just, if you really look at it from the end of your life backwards, did I leave a legacy? Did I leave my children with the tools that they're going to need to inspire and teach my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren about a relationship with God? Did I impact other lives in positive ways? And because we're all going to make our mark one way or another on this planet. It's either going to be a good one or a bad one, or maybe some people just kind of look a little puff. But I want to be able to look back and say, look at that. Not what I did, but this is what God did through me with the time that he gave me on this earth.
What would you say to someone who says, where do I begin?
I'd say do something. Because I get asked that question all the time. People, how did you do that? And then the next question is always, well, how do I get started? And I always just say do something. And know that, there's an argument out there about, if you start a business, then, 7 out of 10 businesses fail. And so that's entirely too risky. And you shouldn't do it because, it's a very high likelihood of failure. I say, try 10 times, just fail early. That's when they're cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So fail early, make it less expensive, but in the end, do something. Get out there and find something you're interested in, something you're passionate about. Find a mentor and read. Everything's at our disposal these days. Audiobooks, or I'm an audiobook junkie. Constantly feeding my brain with fantastic information that creates this creative engine inside me that just starts to work. And you don't know what to do, find a trade show that you're interested in and go walk the show. Go talk to other entrepreneurs. How did they get started? Take those efforts to find people who are doing what you want to do or what you think you want to do and learn from them. Go offer to help them for free, and so that you can learn. Do something like that as a first step, and I think that you'll find success.
Kind of going along with what you just said, are there any books that you recommend people read?
Yeah, I've got a bunch. I've got a long list, but if I had to pick some, I would say How to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I listen to that book once a month. It was written back in the 30s, and it was a life work for the author, who was charged to go out and research what really amazing achievers, if you look back, talking about presidents, talking about Edison, I'm talking about, really, really huge achievers. What was different about them and the way that they approach life? And it does a fantastic job of boiling that down. And so much of it comes back to faith and the belief in what they could achieve. Because you can only achieve what you believe you can achieve. You set your own limitations. And so that book is fantastic for that. The book that sort of started me on my entrepreneurial journey was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Very classic, a favorite. Everyone should read it. It's a real easy read. And it got me to understand how money really works. And obviously, you should definitely immerse yourself in daily biblical study. Whatever way, if it's on your phone, if it's just a text message that comes to you, or you just literally crack open the paper and read, it's a living, breathing document, and it will feed your soul and will give you wisdom that you're going to need to go forward.
Right, as we close out, I'll have this in the show notes, but how can people find out more about you and your products?
So, lovehandle.com is how you found out about our Love Handle products. And then me personally, I'm just now starting to create a following. I don't have that many followers on Instagram yet, but I kind of created that as my platform to sort of talk to the world. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm Mike 100 Watts. So my mom always said I was bright. so at Mike 100 Watts there. I'm always glad to answer an email when I have time. At Mike@lovehandle.com.
Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out, Mike. I appreciate it. And from everyone at Battle Cry Revival, and for Mike Watts, serial entrepreneur, God bless and Godspeed.
Thanks for tuning in. Break the Box is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to help us out, a review would be greatly appreciated and is honestly the best way to help the podcast be heard by others. This podcast is produced by Battle Cry Revival Marketing and hosted by Jake Starkey. For show notes, visit battlecryrevival.com/podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Break the Box is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to help us out, a review would be greatly appreciated and is honestly the best way to help the podcast be heard by others. This podcast is produced by Battle Cry Revival Marketing and hosted by Jake Starkey. For show notes, visit battlecryrevival.com/podcast.